Frollo is the app that several thousand single parents say has been life-changing for them in the most profound way. If you're a single parent and want to connect with other single parents and open yourself up to an amazing support network and new experiences, then the Frollo app is the one for you. The Frollo app has two modes: community mode for meetups and holidays, guidance and support, chats, and discovery to make it easy to find like-minded local single parents near you. Dating mode is a mindful, safe, and respectful dating offering where everybody is there to date another single parent. All users on Frollo are verified, putting our user safety first always. The Frollo app is free to download and use, with the option to upgrade to premium for access to lots of additional premium features for an elevated experience, which makes it easier than ever to access the incredible connections and experiences you're looking for. To download Frollo, search for Frollo, Frollo, on the App or Google Play Store, or go to www.frollo.com for more info. We can't wait to see you on the app soon. Hi, I'm Zoe Desmond, the founder of Frollo, the award-winning app for single parents that features both community and dating modes. And I'm also co-author, along with my wonderful friend Rebecca Cox, that I made through Frollo, of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent. This season of the Frollo podcast features a series of conversations that include wisdom and guidance from some of the wonderful experts and single parents that feature in our book. This week's guest is Let Me Explain, an anonymous but renowned dating educator, qualified social worker, and author of Dating Bible, Block, Delete, Move On. As well as being our favourite dating expert, Lala is also a single mom, and in the pages of How to Be a Happy Single Parent, you'll find her advice and wisdom on navigating the dating scene with kids in tow. Keep listening to hear more from our conversation.
If we could start off, Layla, I know you keep your life very private. So what we've been asking contributors to do is to tell us a little bit about their single parent story. So if you're happy to do that, that would be amazing. And if not, just a little bit around your background and your work and what kind of brought you to where you are now.
So I am a social worker by trade. I started out my career as a sexual health and relationships educator for children and young people. And then that led me onto a career in child protection. I was a social worker between 2007 and end of 2018. I left to pursue a career as an influencer. I hate that term so much, though. I guess I could call myself an author now. But in the middle of what sort of sparked my career move was that in the midst of being a social worker, I also became a single parent. Pretty unexpectedly, I was trying for a baby with my son's dad. Unbeknownst to me, he was cheating, and the relationship fell apart when I was pregnant. So I've done the whole lot as a single parent from conception onwards. And I was obviously a single mum and wanted to try dating. I wasn't in the right headspace for it, actually. I was quite, maybe perhaps more damaged than I thought I had been by what happened with my son's dad. And sort of just jumped into the dating scene very naively with the kind of mindset of he's with someone else, I need to be with someone else. And that was my motivating factor over and above anything else, really. And because of that, I wasn't sensible in the way that I dated at all. I just jumped onto the apps, and the apps were very new. And the last time I'd been single, they hadn't even existed. So it was just a big shock to the system. And I made a lot of mistakes, even with all of my knowledge about domestic abuse and, everything that I'd learned in my career. I still went out and made silly mistakes on dating apps. And then started writing about it on the internet anonymously, because I got to the point where I kind of was able to see through where I'd been going wrong. And then the rest, I guess, is history, because so many women picked up on it, and through word of mouth, it just grew and grew and grew.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is, because I think that's a really common route for single parents, is when they become a single parent, often if there's kind of cheating involved, or if that's been a part of the breakdown of a relationship, there's like a real urge to meet someone else and to move on. And one of the chapters in our book is called is about being by yourself. So it's like, I'm sure that you would agree that one of the most important things about a successful relationship is that you don't need it, but you want it. So it's like you have to be happy on your own. So what do you think are some of the signs that maybe you're not ready to date, and how can you, in your opinion, kind of find peace with that and make sure that you are ready to date before you jump in?
I think it's exactly as you've said. If you're trying to fill some kind of void, then it's likely to lead you to date in a way that is not as considered or thoughtful as it might be if you're dating because you are at the point where you just want human connection and love, and you're all right with being on your own. And that was the thing for me, was that I just wanted to be loved. And I felt that being loved by a man was the answer to all my problems. And I wasn't paying attention to the fact that actually I was getting so much love from this little boy, you know, and it wasn't until it was actually that book by Bell Hooks, All About Love, which is such a good book, which just puts everything into perspective about, you know, we've been taught for so many years that love has to be romantic. And of course we love our family and we love our children, but so much less importance is placed on that kind of love. And especially I think as women, I think it's very gendered as well. We're sort of forced to think about, are we going to be wives? Are we going to be mothers? What about our beautiful big wedding day? And when you are just focused on that, on having the trappings of a relationship rather than what an actual relationship is, and why did I even want one when I had like a little kid who actually, I wish he was a baby now, because I would have been so much more content to just experience that love rather than, and you know, and I adored his love, but it felt like I wasn't as loved as his dad, who was getting love from him and this other woman. You know, it felt like I wasn't as loved. And so that is my biggest thing, is about being really content with being single. And I think then you have to be content with yourself. You have to be content with your own company, and not, because it only feels lonely when you're alone if there is pain in the thoughts that come to your head when you're alone. It doesn't feel lonely when you're alone if you are well nourished mentally and you have a great support network around you and you're feeling loved in many other ways. So for me, it wasn't until I was like, actually, it's really okay to be single, that I've got to put my charger in, that I started making better decisions about men.
That's massive, isn't it? Because there's so much stigma around being a single parent anyway, and being a single mum. I think sometimes people are told, like, that people believe they ought to be lonely, so they sit at home and feel lonely and they try to fill that void. But actually, if there was more of a picture of, this can be a nice way of life, that you are allowed to be happy as you are, as a single mum, then, which is kind of what we're hoping the book will help to support, is this picture of like, you can actually just be happy as a single parent. You don't have to be looking for something else all the time. It's
difficult because there's so much on the internet around shaming single mums. You know, I had it in a comment yesterday where somebody, I got this weird fucking backlash yesterday. I posted this advice to single mums, which was, just don't put it on your dating app profile. Tell people that you've got kids, but it doesn't need to be on the profile, because there are people who will intentionally swipe on you because you're a mother, and those people have very sinister intentions. It was just a small piece of advice. and I got massive backlash. But some of the backlash includes comments like, could it be because, no right man in a right mind will want to get in a relationship with a woman who's clearly driven her man away and won't let him be in the kid's life? So you're going to trick a new man into dating, not knowing her red flags, and then expect him to take care of another man's kids? Absolute clown. And this guy's a fucking idiot. And I he bears no, he's a fucking idiot. But but that is the kind of stuff that is used against women all the time. If people want to criticize you, they will say, "Oh, you're a single one. You drove the man away. Couldn't even keep him." So and for women in general, there's a lot of, "Oh, you haven't been picked by a man. Look at you." So I think it's really hard to break out of that and not internalize those opinions that are, if you haven't been picked by a man, there is something wrong with you. And if the man who you had kids with has gone, what the fuck? Like,
I think that this is what we are so desperately trying to change the narrative about, like, part of this single parent story. It's so damaging. And I think it's probably the reason why so many of us, when we become single parents, suddenly like are hit with this shame and stigma, and which doesn't kind of make complete sense at the time. But then when you start to piece together how society, has, exactly what you've said, and all of these outdated and negative like stories about single parents. But actually, Becky and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how, it's the path after a while, like a lot of single parents like that we know, and we were saying it for ourselves as well. You get to a point where it's like, what would it look like to bring someone into my life, and is that what I want? Because you do get to a point where you're like, I'm okay, I can do this on my own, I'm independent, I'm happy, I've like nested, my home is my home, I've got like, and there's not that like void that you're trying to fill. Actually, it gets to a point where it's like someone would have to be pretty special and pretty amazing to get to have a spot in this picture. And I think that's a really important message as well to send to new single parents, that actually does.
What's interesting, I was thinking about this the other day actually, is that when he was very little, I was much more keen to date. It actually felt much easier to date because I'd moved back to my mum's after I split up with my son's dad, and he was a baby. So he's in bed at like 6:30 or whatever every night. So it felt like I could date much more easily. And it also felt like, because he didn't really have any level of consciousness or anything, I was much freer about who I might speak to or whatever. Now that he's older and he has this really firm personality inbuilt, it wouldn't even, I don't know who I could bring, or it changes the way that you think about it. Somebody could slot much more easily into your life when they're tiny. If they're 3 years old, they're just going to take to whoever you invite, whereas an 11-year-old boy, there's going to be potentially difficulties there, personality clashes, or my son's never met a man. I think there would be problems if I had a man coming in and cuddling me on the sofa. I can imagine my son trying to like get in the middle of that or something. So I think it really does. I think there's a definite difference in dating as a single parent when they're very little and dating when they're older.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to backtrack a minute to the that I saw that column, how that column reaction played out. And firstly, I feel like there's obviously people are very defensive about things that they've done and they're not sure about, and you'll navigate. If you've made a mistake, then you want to be really like, no, I did the right thing. But also, don't you think with people who really strongly don't want to date single parents, that's equally their responsibility to put that out there? Like I wrote a piece about dating a year ago or whatever, and included an anecdote of someone's profile I'd seen that just said no secondhand kids, which was kind of entertaining in my opinion, but it's like, at least they are stating their preference. So I'm not going to match with that person. It's like, as much as you might say it, like someone might think it's my responsibility to like declare that I have a child, it's as much their responsibility to declare that they are not interested in having children and they don't want to match with someone that has kids. It's like, it's not always on the parent, and it's particularly shouldn't always be on the woman, right? No one's saying to single dads like, oh, don't advertise your kids. Most single dads have pictures of their kids on their profile.
The reality is that the risks are different. It's like, you know, I wouldn't even, I made that advice very specifically for single mums. And normally if I'm talking about single parenting, I'll say single parenting. This advice was for single mums, because you don't have hordes of fucking female paedophiles out here trying to get into single dads' lives. It just doesn't happen. So the advice is completely different for single dads and single mums. Single dads, you can put what the fuck you want on your profile. I mean, you still need to protect your kids, and I wouldn't be introducing them to different women every fucking 5 weeks. But the likelihood of you running into a woman who's targeting you to sexually abuse your children is very slim.
Well, the risks of dating as a woman and a man are different in general as well, aren't they? So it's
completely different.
Can we also just touch on what those risks are? You know, with your expertise, I know you've spoken about this in the past, but it would be great to be able to include for new single parents those like main safeguarding issues that they should be aware of when they start dating.
I mean, certainly, as we've said, the fact that there are people who will target single mums. So the less information that you put about your children on your profile, the better. I think the thing that I used to see often, actually, as a social worker, was single mums who would move men into the house very quickly, or who would invite men back to the house when the children were there. I've dealt with a couple of cases, one where a mum brought a one-night stand back to the house while her daughter was asleep. She'd been out raving anyway. I mean, she was not a good mum. I mean, don't say that anywhere. But she'd been out raving. She brought a man back to the house. She was comatose because she was on drugs and drink and whatever. And the man, before he left, he raped the 9-year-old on his way out. I've also dealt with cases where men have been in the house and raped mum, and it's been very audible for the children to hear. My advice is my advice to single women anyway is just don't invite random men back to your house. Get to know them first. Go to their house first. Go on lots of dates outside in public first. If you have children, you just have to be so much more cautious around these things. Because there are dating safety issues anyway. But if you live in a house with your children, then you're a lot more vulnerable. Don't invite people around when your children are sleeping. A lot of mums are tempted to do that. Again, you can do that when you're down the line, when you've trusted this person, you've met their friends, you know, but don't. It can be very tempting, especially for those of us who don't have a great support network and don't have a lot of time without our kids. You know, it can be tempting to go, oh, you know, let's have the first date here, the baby's in bed. Just don't do it. That is a safeguarding risk potentially. Introducing them to your children too early, again, it's different. If, for example, you're dating a single dad and you've got to know each other and it fits to just be like, we're going to the zoo together today, then that's fine. You know, it's nuanced. It's really difficult to give this advice because it's like there are going to be some circumstances in which it's okay to meet up with this guy and his kids and you don't know him that well, you know. But in other circumstances, it's not going to be okay. As a social worker, I saw people moving boyfriends into their homes with their kids extremely early, like 2-3 weeks after meeting them on Facebook. These people would be living in the family home. And these are obviously women with a lot of vulnerabilities anyway. But I think that there is a temptation to move relationships way too quickly when you are dating with children because of all the restrictions that you have with childcare. But actually it should be the opposite. You should date 10 times more slowly than you do if you don't have kids, and it's a barrier. It's a barrier. You know, being a parent is very restrictive. And I really do urge people to think about logistically, are you able to, is there any point in even trying to do this? Because do you have somebody that can look after the kids once every week or once every 2 weeks? Can you go out on dates when the kids are at school? Otherwise, there is no point, because you're going to get talking to someone and you're going to want to, you know, move those boundary lines, because otherwise how the fuck are you going to see them?
And also, like, is that your priority? It's like, do you want to do that? That's the thing, isn't it?
Like, literally, can you date? At the moment, I get 1 day off every 2 weeks. I've kind of come to the point where it's like, it's a little bit pointless. How can I do? I haven't got the momentum with anyone. Whereas when I was living with my mum, it was very different, because I had a live-in babysitter, basically, you know. So I do think people should really consider whether it's really the right time for you to even date. And I know that sounds horrible and shit, because you should, as a mum, be entitled to have love and intimacy and all of those things. But perhaps there's a 15-year period in your life where if you don't have the right support network, you might not be able to do that.
What about green flags and red flags for dating?
I mean, obviously, I'd urge people to read my book. I think if people are asking too many questions about your children, but again, things like this will be kind of very gut instinct, because I've had it before where I felt, why do you keep asking, like, why are you asking for a photo of my son? Or why are you asking where he goes to school? Or why do you keep bringing him up? Like, I actually don't really want to talk about him, because I'm trying to date as me, not me as a mum. So I think you should really follow your gut instinct. And if somebody feels like they're asking too many questions about your children, then, and that doesn't feel right, then I'd take that as a red flag, especially if they don't have children themselves. Like, why are you so interested? Red flags would be too much intensity too soon. So trying to move things too forward too quickly. If they are willing to date a single mum, then they have to have that patience. They have to consider that you do have restrictions in your life. And if they make you feel bad about that, or they try to make you breach your boundaries, oh, come on. Or, somebody sent me a conversation about this the other day, that it was a policeman, in fact, that this guy was like, oh, what time does little one go to bed? Can I come round after? They hadn't even swapped numbers yet. And this woman messaged me to just say, fucking hell, not even a police, because he challenged her when she said, you're really asking to come to my house after once my child's in bed. And he was like, oh, come on, I'm not a murderer, am I? And the fact that even somebody with his level of knowledge about what the world is like isn't going, yeah, actually, you're right, you're being really sensible, you shouldn't really be inviting people around, is a huge red flag. So I guess that kind of notice, that kind of manipulation of your boundaries. And yeah, the intensity one, trying to move things too fast, trying to allude to the fact that you're in a relationship very, very early on, love bombing stuff. That would be the one that would worry me the most, especially for single parents, is that moving way too fast, way too much intensity, way too quickly.
On that subject, kind of the love bombing and all of that, there's a lot of single parents in the Frollo community who are co-parenting with narcissists and have had a tendency to, attract or invite.
I'd avoid the term narcissist, because they're probably not narcissists. They're probably just domestic abusers.
Okay.
They're probably not narcissists. To be a narcissist, you have to be like Donald Trump. He is that is the definition of a narcissist. Absolute ego, just the orange face and the stuff around how the world sees him and all of that stuff. Like, you have to have that grandiose, overinflated ego. You can't I think I see this a lot. My ex is a narcissist. 1% of the population, in fact, probably less than 1% of the population is a narcissist. The fact that all of these women are like, my ex is a narcissist. No, he's not. He's a misogynistic abuser.
Yeah, it's men as well. It's men as well in the Frollo community who are dealing with these characters. So it's definitely on both sides. But then I guess a domestic abuser probably, fits the bill as well for what a lot of what's being described. So yeah, any like guidance or tips for somebody reading the book who is dealing with co-parenting or trying to navigate co-parenting with somebody that is a domestic abuser?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult, and it would be remiss to say that there was any real workable solutions to it, because you are kind of at the whim of their abuse, and at the center of all domestic abuse is power and control, and that's what they're going to want to do. They're not going to want to relinquish any control. They're not even going to want to be on an even keel, because it feels like giving you power if they are compromising. So there is nothing easy about it. If you can use co-parenting apps like Cozily, there's a few good ones actually, which remove the need for you to have any communication with each other. It all takes place on the app. Abusers will do things like, if they know it's your birthday weekend coming up, they will purposely not have the kids that weekend to fuck you up and to get a reaction from you. So it's, I guess, about planning and thinking ahead about ways that you can manage stuff like that. So, if it's your birthday weekend and they might do something like that, can you arrange for a friend or your parents to have the kid that weekend, so that if they do fuck that up, you're not then engaged in a battle with them and being let down. It's sensible to go to court, but we all know that court is a long and expensive process, and that often domestic abusers don't even stick to what is stipulated in court orders, again, because that rocks their need for power. They've got somebody else now telling them. So now they're having to try to relinquish power from not only the courts, but from you. Record things, log everything. Try the grey rock method, which is where you just have no reaction to the things that they do, because that is what they want. They want to turn up an hour late and have you at the door shouting about what a dickhead they've been, and then they can storm off, and then they don't have to see the kid that day, and then it's your fault. So you have to look at these kind of power plays and not engage in them at all. And it's very difficult. But the grey rock thing really does kind of help you to remember, I'm not going to react to this in any way, shape or form. And I'm going to prepare myself for each contact we have, that you may do or say something that is abusive, and I am not going to have any emotional reaction to it. And it's difficult. It's so difficult, especially if you've got ADHD or something like that, and it's really like in your nature to just react. And it's difficult as well, because it sounds like I'm putting the onus on women or parents to not react to their abuser, when really the onus should be on the abuser to fucking stop what you're doing and stop playing games and see what you're doing to your kid. But we can't affect any change in those people, because they're abusers. Like, we can't expect rational behavior or thinking from them. So unfortunately, it all boils down to us and our reactions. And it's just so fucking difficult.
Yeah.
My main aim in life is to get people to not have babies with abuse. I'm trying to.
Oh, me too.
Please.
Maybe that's in the next joint book.
Yeah. How do you navigate dating when you've got an ex-partner or a co-parent that is like that, because they almost become more of a presence in the relationship than the children. So have you got any advice for people if they're trying to navigate dating and they've got a difficult co-parent?
It's so difficult. It is so hard. I mean, I would be... See again, I mean, the advice sometimes sounds, you know, because what I was going to say was, don't give any information to your kids, you know, but I want to phrase that correctly. I don't want to just say, don't, you know, hide your relationship from your kids. But sometimes what we do is we end up giving the abuser ammunition via the child, or the abuser will use the child as a kind of way to destroy the relationship. So I do think it's important for, if you are in an abusive relationship, to keep a new relationship quiet for a while, because your ex probably will try to fuck it up. I also think it's really important to be honest with your new partner about the problems that they might face. I would not want to get into a relationship with a man who had an abusive ex in the background who might want to, you know, dox me or destroy my life in some way. If he didn't tell me about that, I'd feel like I'd been kept from really important information. So as hard as it is, I think it's really important for your new partners to go in with their eyes open. I mean, what other advice would I give? You know, it's just so difficult, because what can you do? Just keep reporting if they're doing fucked up things. Keep contacting the police if they're doing awful things. Keep talking to your kids in an age-appropriate way about abusive behaviour, about what's right and about what's wrong. But really, it's about, because everything is on this other person and you can't necessarily control what this other person is going to do. You can only manage yourself in a way that keeps you the safest. And the best way to do that is to not give away too much information about where you're going to be or what you're going to be doing, or you know, but what can you do, you know?
I think that's it. It's like all you can do is look after yourself and make yourself as strong as possible, and make sure that you have coping mechanisms and that you have support. And ultimately that's the best.
Is so important. Even just somebody that you can speak to about it, because, you know, if the ex is causing hell but they're not quite doing anything that meets like police level or anything, just having somebody in your life who you can sound off at the end of the day and unravel it all in your head is really important. Making a log of all these things is really important. And even if you do have like a family go-between, that can be really helpful. Somebody who, if you're not using the apps, like, can your mum be the link, or your dad preferably even, or, you know, is there anyone that can provide that buffer between your family and the abuser? But this is you can give all of the advice in the world about how to deal with an abuser, but you can never control them. And so I find it very difficult, because there is no real advice. If they're going to come to your door and smash the window and kick off, that's what they're going to do.
And on that, because it's so true. I think a lot of people feel in such a powerless position, and I think it can be so depressing for people, because it's like, oh, this is just the situation I'm in, and it's not a time thing. It's a kind of, this is who this person is and what they're trying. It's not like a phase thing of, oh, after 6 months of parenting with them, it will be easier. It's kind of goes on and on. But on that point, just in terms of like the person dealing with its mental health and self-care, you know, if they're doing all the grey rocking they can do, and they're putting the kind of app, the communication app or whatever boundaries like that in place, but still, like, how does somebody like look after their mental health so that it's not impacting them being able to just, be the best parent they can be at the same time? Is there any kind of tips you'd have on that front?
Yeah, I think it's, forgive yourself. Don't hold any guilt or self-blame for the state of the co-parenting relationship. You've been in an abusive relationship, and as much as we'd all love to be able to rewind and choose a different partner, you didn't know. And even if you did know, you probably didn't have much choice around whether you were able to continue the pregnancy or whatever. So I think the removal, the forgiveness of yourself and the removal of any self-blame is really important, because if you carry that, then you're less able to deal with things in a, you're less able, because you're constantly questioning yourself, and you blame yourself for this, and you are less able to, I think, see it as all being them, and seeing not you as the problem. I think when we see ourselves as the problem, well, we just don't, you know what it's like. If you're feeling guilty about something, or you feel like this is your issue, then you're not going to handle it in that kind of compartmentalized way, in that grey rock way, because you're going to be having this anxiety. So I think forgive yourself. If you do hold any blame, self-blame for that, then you really need to get support. You need to talk to somebody who's an expert in domestic abuse, who can let you know that none of this is your fault. It's just the situation that you're in now because you happen to meet some shitbag. And that's it. Support network and talking to people. And I think that there are, again, there's no other, it's so shit because there's no like magic solutions, really. It's just about coming to terms with where you're at in your life with the greatest support around you possible. Go to, there's great women's groups or groups. There actually aren't that many great men's groups. The men's groups for domestic abuse tend to be, support groups for domestic abuse tend to be full of abusers. Don't put that in the book. I worry about a lot of these men in the Frollo community who are saying that their exes are abusive, because the percentage is just not going to be that high. The percentage is not going to be that high. And very often in my 15-year career as a social worker, I saw abusive mums, very abusive mums to their children, not abusive mum, I didn't see that kind of gendered domestic violence. It was always the man. And when there was, when there were calls from men to say they'd been abused, there was always a story before that. There was always somebody, it always turned out that he'd actually been the one who'd abused her, but he'd called the police just to get in there early. So sorry, that was just a kind of side note, but it is how it is. And I do worry about these guys who are like, my ex is a narcissist. Is she? Maybe she is. I don't know. But did she physically, and did she control?
Well, this is the thing that's like, someone's always controlling the narrative, aren't they? Who's telling the story? Why are they telling that story? It's when I look at my ex, it's like, how have you got all these mates? You're such an asshole. But he's making up the story. He's telling the story.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I see it all the time. It's a very difficult position to be in, and the best thing you can do is get support and speak to other people who've been through similar things to you. And that is the thing. You just have to do your best to not add fuel to the fire and not give them what they want, and they will get bored eventually. And when they move on to their next partner, that's when you may get a bit of relief.
Yeah, I feel like we've so far in this conversation only asked you about stressful and scary things, and I feel like that's probably what people do all day on Instagram, is make you feel quite stressed about having to look after everyone. So I thought it might be nice to give people some ideas for what would be a nice way to date a single parent, what might be a good date idea, how do you open up conversations about having kids, and just a few of the positives of dating as a single parent, and what is a nice way to get to know someone again if you're coming into single parenting a little bit later in life and you haven't dated for a long time.
I would drop it very soon into the conversation by saying, like when I was on dating apps, I wouldn't say it on my profile, but the second they said, what you up to this weekend, I'd say, I've got my son this weekend, or whatever. So you can just drop it in really easily. The thing for me personally, and other people might not be this way, but for me, when I'm dating, I want that to be the period where I am not a mum. And by that, I mean, I don't want to be responsible for anyone. I don't want to, like, if a man says to me, when are you cooking for me? So goodbye. I cook 13 nights a fucking week. If you're expecting me to cook anything on the one night that I'm child free, you can get fucked. So I think that's a really important thing. I want somebody to show that they're considering what my life might be like as a mum, and it is constant. I want somebody to look after me a little bit, and I don't think that that's unreasonable. Of course, I have to look after them in whatever way they need that to. It has to be reciprocal, but I want you to understand that I look after someone constantly, and that would be a really nice thing that you could do for me as a partner. I think it's really important. It's a really green flag if they are understanding about like last minute emergencies or whatever. I've been in situations where I've had to cancel a date with someone because my mum's phoned me and said he's vomiting all over the place, and I'm not going to go out on it. I can't go out on a date, like leave my mum like that. So, and then face people who've been like pissed off about that, or so I really think it's important to date people. This is why I prefer to date dads, because they get it. That, you don't have to explain to them why a kid would suddenly start vomiting randomly at 8:00 at night. So yeah, and I think it's not necessarily green flags outside of that. I think the green flags are the same as for anybody with dating. Somebody who's just kind and interested in you and wants to get to know who you are, and somebody who it just feels safe and nice to be around. Somebody who is able to consider you holistically as a mum, but also as a woman. I don't want to just be seen as a mum. I want to be. I don't want to be a MILF. I want you to want to fuck me, not a mum that you'd like to. You know what I mean? So I think for me, but for many people, it's not like that. I think for a lot of people, they want to be taken as a whole, as a mum, and they have much more intention of, bringing someone into their family. Because that's not in my mindset. I'm like, no, that there is me, and then there is me as a mum, and one night every 2 weeks, I want to just be a random wild woman. But that's not the same for everyone.
Yeah, and you have to actually make that decision before you start dating, don't you? Yeah. What am I looking for? That's otherwise, how are you going to find it?
Those two things. One, what am I looking for? And two, logistically, can I realistically achieve what I'm looking for? If I am looking to bring somebody in who may be a wonderful new stepdad, then do I have that space and time away from the kids to be able to get to know someone in that capacity well enough to be able to potentially introduce them to my kids at some point in the future?
I feel like we've taken up enough of your time, Layla. Just to finish up, could you just give a little piece of advice to new single parents if they're feeling like, I actually can't do this? What would you say?
Well, if you feel like you can't do it, step away and don't do it until you feel like you can. I think if you're forcing yourself into feeling like I should date, I have to date, I need to date, then it's gonna be shit. Dating is a shit show in 2022 for everybody, not just for single parents. Dating has significantly changed post-pandemic because of social media and dating apps, and it is brutal. And I think that if you're not in a full-on like, yeah, this will be fun, just don't do it. There's no need.
And that's a wrap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then I have one small favour to ask. Please can you take a minute to subscribe to the Frollo podcast and give us a rating and review. This really helps other single parents who might benefit from it find us. The Frollo app, which is fully user verified for user safety, is available on the Google Play Store and the App Store, and you can find out more info and download links at www.frollo.com or follow us on Instagram at FrolloApp. My co-host on this series of the Frollo podcast and co-author of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent, Rebecca Cox, is on Instagram at SingleMotherEdit.
And you can purchase your copy of our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, at all the major book retailers. Until next time, have a great week.